My topic is volunteering after retirement. And as I look at this audience, I know most of the people here, none of us have retired all that recently. But if I were talking to a librarian who was just on the verge of retirement, I would mention that retirement can be a shock to the system, especially if you've been very involved in your job. Anyone who has seen that movie about Schmidt knows how quickly you are replaced at your job. Volunteers are revered, particularly in Ethiopia. As you know, I went to Ethiopia. I happened to volunteer with VSO, which is Volunteer Service Overseas, even before I retired. So I didn't suffer that ego bursting when you find out that a few days after you leave, nobody cares about you. So I didn't suffer that, but I really can recommend volunteering overseas as a highly rewarding activity. So much so that even though I know that only a few, if any of you, would really do it, I suggest you think about it. If you are a flexible person, if you like adventure, and if you like to help. I was sent to Ethiopia by BSO, and Ethiopia is on the Horn of Africa. However, I had such a marvelous time there. I was supposed to go for 2 years, and I stayed for 5. And this picture is a donkey mobile in the rural areas of Ethiopia, where they couldn't possibly afford libraries. The charity called Ethiopia Breeze built a donkey mobile, which is simply a mobile library on wheels that is carried around by a donkey. It's enormously popular. And after I finished my stint with BSO, I started a charity, and I go back to Ethiopia every 2 years. This is the city of Addis Ababa. Are the lights too strong, or can you see it? Are the pictures clear? Addis Ababa is the only city in Ethiopia that has any multiple story dwellings at all. I went for 5 years, then I started my own charity. Now I go back every 2 years, but not many people are that intensively involved. You can volunteer to go overseas for 6 months. You can go for 2 years. You can go for shorter periods of time. There are different kinds of agencies that send you for different lengths of time. This winter, oh gosh, that picture's terrible. Let's see if I can make it better. I wonder if you can operate something. Well, I'm just wondering, I had cataracts, so I'm never sure if stuff's in focus. Is that in focus? No. Well, that's a picture, yes, but I didn't know that. On my wall, it looked a lot sharper. Well, we didn't all know you were apart. Right. While I was in Ethiopia this winter, I did 5 volunteer writing projects. And this picture is a picture of the Ethiopian women that I worked with at IDA-UHP, which is an Ethiopian charity that caters to the poorest of the poor. And they have many library projects that would never have come to fruition without these very energetic women of Ethiopia. A second thing I did is I went to a charity school called and discovered that they had no internet, I contacted ex-Libris and said, well, you know, do you think you guys could come up with enough money to connect it on the internet? Not only did you come up with enough money to connect this library to the internet, came up with enough money to help several other libraries as well. The libraries in Ethiopia are a haven for serious students. Most people in Ethiopia have 7 or 8 children. They live in houses the size of a broom closet. And the children have nowhere to study that they aren't being tripped over by all the other kids in the household. So every library is a haven for serious students. The center had 12 computers with no connection. The students use the libraries very heavily, if only as a place to study in peace. There are 100 students in every school classroom in Ethiopia. The city of Addis Ababa has made a commitment to trying to reduce class sizes over the next 5 years from 100 per class to 70 per class. And that's their first 5-year goal. Pity the teacher who has to teach 100 children every day. They have nothing supplied. No textbooks, no books, no pens, no pencils, nothing. So volunteers are needed, and they're very much appreciated. I felt like the big man on the campus every time I went into these places. People were so grateful to have me come. It's best to work through a recognized agency when you're volunteering in another country to navigate for you, to make sure that you are placed in a situation where your skills are put to best use and that you don't get all the way over to a foreign country and then find out that the job that doesn't suit. That's why I was very happy with DSO, but there are other agencies, and I have a list of them, which when I opened my briefcase, I discovered I had left on the counter at home. But that does not mean that list isn't available. I think everybody knows how to get in touch with me, and I would certainly be happy to give you a list of possible agencies. Government schools have libraries. I just think, oh my God, what these pictures are. That's a picture of a government school library, one of the ones that's a very good one. But they don't have trained library staff. And the shelving is eccentric, to say the least. For example, although you can't read it, this sign says that it's pardon? Yes, and if you look at the books, they're all dictionaries. But the staff is very eager to learn. The staff is dying to know how they should be doing things. There are no training courses for school librarians. There's no training courses for librarians, period. There used to be a course at Addis Ababa University, but they closed it 2 years ago. So if you want to get a library science degree, you have to go to another country in Africa, I think South Africa. So there is no training. There's informal training such as I did. But the staff is very, very keen. These are the 3 people, the 2 people that I did an automatic automation project with. And I started off, and it took me 3 weeks to make sure that I knew that they knew what they were doing. And then they went off on their own. I worked with 13 schools. These are some of the librarians. Each and every one of them was gasping to do a better job and just hung on my every word. And that's just Ethiopia. Volunteers can go all over the world, mostly in developing countries, Latin America, Eastern Europe, Asia, Africa. I didn't know of anybody who went to Australia as a Going outside of Ethiopia is beyond my personal experience, but agencies seek out librarians for many countries. A word of caution is make sure you know what you're getting into. I went with VSO, which is a known quantity. There are other agencies which are not as well organized or as good at looking after their volunteers. And in fact, there are some profit-making organizations that charge you $3,000 to $4,000 to go to a country and be a volunteer. You pay your own way, you pay your own accommodation, then they pay a fee. And these are profit-making organizations. That's not who I would pick as my first choice to go with. Life is very different in other countries. The culture is very different. This is a woman who is making a coffee ceremony. Coffee clutches, which they don't call coffee clutches, but coffee, sitting around and enjoying a cup of coffee is one of the favorite things that Ethiopians do because it's almost completely free. You just go to a coffee tree and pull off some coffee beans, which are completely free, and you grind them. And at least you roast them, you grind them, and you make the coffee all while you're sitting around chatting. So when someone invites you over for a cup of coffee, it's not as if you go for 10 minutes, you go for 2.5 hours. The animals are very different. This is a colobus monkey that lives in the trees all over Jimma, Ethiopia. And they jump down on the lecture halls, which have tin roofs. And the monkeys run back and forth across the tin roofs, and they make such a racket that the teacher can't be heard. So all the teachers in Jimma always had a stick in their hand. And when the monkeys jumped on the roof, they stepped outside, tapped the roof with their stick, and then the monkeys ran away and they would continue with their lectures. The architecture is very different. I'm sure that whatever country you volunteer with, you'll find the architecture is very different. This is typical medieval stone structure. The scenery is very difficult. This is a castle in London where I worked, and it was the castle of King. Now I forgot his name. Facilitas. That's Facilitas Castle. Every country has amazing sites. These are the stelae, the hand-built stelae of the Kingdom of Aksum, which is in the north of Ethiopia. And those stelae are about 30 meters high. They're carved. They weigh hundreds of thousands of pounds. And no one knows how they got them from the ground after they carved them, how they got them lifted up into the air. There are even astounding sights to see when you are touring. Now, actually, I didn't teach any of these people who have the great big discs in their lips because they were in the very south of Ethiopia where access to transportation is extremely difficult. But in every country, while you are volunteering, it goes without saying that you go to visit all the sites. So think about it. Adventure without danger? Well, almost. What's safe these days? An opportunity to live out of the box and the chance of a lifetime to be really useful and helpful. And that's why I would recommend volunteering. And way of using your time well.